The silence of the abandoned Aldrich Theatre, once the first thing that struck your ira, not peaceful silence but the dance, muffled quiet of a trim. Dust motes danced in the weak shafts of light piercing the boarded up lobby windows. Elira, a violinist whose own career had hit a sore note after nerve damage in her bar hand, had inherited the decaying Edwardian music hall from a reclusive great uncle she barely remembered, desperate for purpose and a place to hide from her foul dreams. She'd moved into the cramped, yet caretaker splat above the stage. The first night she heard the music, it wasn't loud, barely a whisper, seeping up through the floorboards of her flat. The ceiling of the stage, below, fragments of melody, a mournful cello line, the hesitant trail of a flute, the rich undertone of a bassoon, beautiful, achingly so but fragmented and dissonant, like an orchestra tuning up, but never resolving. It felt lonely. Elara, her own violin case gathering dust in the corner, found it strangely comforting. A shared language of the incomplete. She mentioned it to Mrs. Gable, the elderly owner of the corner shop. The woman's face paled. Well, you hear it, do you? The Aldrich echoes. Best ignore it. Dear, just the wind in the pipes, they say, but her eyes held a deeper dread. Ignoring the warning, Elira began exploring the theater by day. The auditorium was a cavern of faded red, velvet and tarnished gold leaf. The stage, thick with dust, felt strangely charged. Backstage, in the labyrinthine corridors of dressing rooms, she found the door warp shut. Forcing it open revealed a steep, narrow staircase descending into utter blackness. Echo, smelling of damp earth and old rosin, wafted up, the source of the music. That night, the music changed. It grew louder, clearer. The fragments began to coalesce into a recognizable piece. Sibelius waltz traced, but warped. The waltz rhythm stuttered, the melody sliding into the scorned minors, notes bending unnaturally. Beneath the familiar strains, a new sound emerged, a low resonant humming, felt more than heard, vibrating up through the floorboards and into Elira's bones. It was an instrument. It was the building itself, driven by a musician's compulsion to understand the discord. Elira ventured below, her flashlight beam caught through the oppressive darkness of the sub-basement. It was an storage. It was a forgotten rehearsal space, or perhaps something else. Stone walls, a sunken stone floor, and in the center, a strange, intricate pattern etched into the stone, overlapping circles and sharp, angular lines that hurt the eyes to focus on. The air hummed with latent energy, thick with the scent of ozone, and that underlying damp earth smell scattered on the floor were not dust sheets, but fragile yellowed sheets of music, covered in frantic, handwritten notations that devolved into chaotic scribbles. And there, propped against the far wall, was a conductor's podium, not wood, but dark veined stone, matching the floor etchings. On it lay a single item, a conductor's baton, carved from the same dark stone, its tip stained a deep rusty brown. Elira picked up a sheet of music. The title was scrawled, Maestro Aldrich's Final Composition, the discordant Requiem. The notes were impossibly complex, demanding techniques beyond human capability. Shifting keys violently, scribbled in the margins. It demands more, always more. The stone drinks the sound, drinks the soul. Another sheet, can't stop. The baton moves. It pulls the music from us, pulls the life. The final entry barely legible. The silence is coming, it feeds on the silence after the last note. But the silence is never enough. It hungers for the source. Break the baton. Break the writing stopped mid-sentence. The humming intensified. Elira's damaged hand began to ache fiercely. A deep, robbing pain she hadn't felt in months. She looked at the stone baton. It seemed to pulse with a faint, dark light. That night the music wasn't just loud. It was invasive. It filled the flat, vibrating the walls, shaking the dust from the rafters. The warped, false trees was now a grotesque parody, laced with sheet-racking glissando and pounding. A rhythmic percussion that shouldn't exist. The deep hum resonated in Elira's teeth, her skull, and beneath it all, she heard something new. Ragged gasping breaths and stifled sobs, woven into the fabric of the music. She ran down to the sub-basement, flashlight beam shaking. The stone pattern on the floor was faintly glowing, a sickly greenish light. The air crackled, and standing on the stone podium, Holding the dark baton was a figure, not solid, the silhouette sketched, in swirling dust and shadow, faintly luminescent, tall, gaunt, wearing the tattered remnants of formal tales. Its face was indistinct, but Alara felt its focus, a desperate, hungry intensity directed at the empty space before it, as if conducting an invisible orchestra. The stone baton in its spectral hand moved with jerky, unnatural precision. As Alara watched frozen, the phantom conductor turned its head, not towards her, but through her, where eyes should be were voids that pulsed with the same sickly green light as the floor. The dissonant music as well to a painful crescendo. The phantom breaths turned into choke screams of terror woven into the score. The baton slashed down. Silence, not just an absence of sound, but an active silence. A vacuum that sucked at Alara's ears. Her breath, her very thoughts, it pressed in, heavy and suffocating. The green glow in the floor, and the conductor's ears intensified, throbbing with a horrible satisfaction. The silence was defeating. Then the conductor's void eyes snapped to Alara. The hunger radiating from it was palpable. A physical force. It raised the stone baton, pointing it directly at her. Not an instrument, a weapon, a conduit. Alara's damaged hand erupted in agony, white, hot, and searing, as if the nerves were being ripped out. She cried, yawned. The sound instantly swallowed by the oppressive silence of trembled as I went across phantom strings inside her injured hand, drawing out a note of pure, excruciating pain that only she could hear. The music wasn't truthside anymore. It was being pulled from her. More, the word wasn't spoken. It vibrated in the stone, in the air, in her bones. It was the conductor's voice, the building's voice, ancient and insatiable. The instrument is void, but the sound, the pain it sustains, play. The stone baton twitched. Alara's arm jerked involuntarily, her fingers spasming as if clutching Avila's neck. She didn't, thought, another internal note screamed from her damaged nerves, a discordant shriek of agony that fed the glowing pattern on the floor. The green light flared. She understood Maestro Aldrich's notes. The musicians hadn't just played. They were played until there was nothing left but silence for the entity to consume. And her damaged hand, her musical soul, was a new, vulnerable instrument. The requiem wasn't for the dead. It was made from the dying. Terror wore red with the excruciating pull on her nerves. She couldn't break the baton. It was spectral, stone held by a ghost. But the podium, the source of the pattern, it was physical, gritting her teeth against the phantom violin, tearing her hand apart. Alara lunged not at the conductor, but at the stone podium. She slammed her shoulder into it with all her weight and desperation. It was immensely heavy, but it shifted slightly with a grating sound. The green light flickered violently. The spectral conductor shrieked, a soundless vibration of pure rage that shook the stones. The pull on Alara. Yes, hand lessened fractionally. She shoved again, heaving with primal fear. The podium tilted. The stone baton clattered to the floor, its dark glow dimming. The conductor's form wavered, the swirling dust starting to dissipate. The oppressive silence began to recede, replaced by the frantic hammering of Alara's shirt and her own gaspes. She scrambled back, clutching her throbbing, mercifully silent hand. The green glow in the floor faded to nothing. The sub-basement was dark, silent, and still. Only the smell of dust and ozone remained. Had she broken it? Had she stopped it? Weeks passed. The theater remained silent. Alara's hand healed slightly, the nerve pain less constant. She began sorting through the mountain of sheet music upstairs, trying to reclaim some purpose. One evening, frustrated by a complex passage of Brahms, she hummed a phrase, trying to find the melody. As the last note faded from her lips, the silence descended again. That same heavy, sucking silence. Cold dread washed over her. Then, faintly seeping from the floorboards, came the sound, not the full orchestra, not yet a single discordant note banjan sound, played on a phantom violin. It echoed at the note she had just hummed, but corrupted, and it originated not from below the stage, but from within the walls of her own flat. The silence after her note had been consumed. Alara froze. The note hung in the air, a malignant promise. She felt the faintest tremor in her damaged hand, a ghostly echo of friction, like a ball barely touching a string. The greenish glow was gone. The podium still tilted, the baton lying inert on cold stone far below. But the hunger remained. It had tasted her sound again, her music, her pain, and it had found a new way in. The discordant hadn't been defeated. It had simply found a smaller, closer instrument to play, and it was tuning up.